Greetings, adventurers. You're listening to the Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood with me, Professor Atwood. I'm glad you're here, and I can't wait to tell you about my latest journey. So please, settle in, relax, and prepare to quietly drift off with me to parts known, unknown, and even some places in between. Comfortable? Very well. Let's get underway. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, episode 6. I know, I'm making it sound like every episode is a big deal. Well, for me, it kinda is. Just getting to go to all of these exotic places and sharing them with you. It makes me excited, and I love doing it. I will say this, sometimes when I get back to the lab, I get a little melancholy. I have such a great time on my adventures, and as exhausting as they are, I'm always a little sad to see them end. Except for that one in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, but I'll talk about that one another time. Sailing down the Amazon was an amazing experience, and I still have my suntan. Yeah, I know, this is even months later. I used sunscreen, of course, but when you're that close to the equator, the sun can get a little more intense than usual. I was thinking about how much I like to be on the water, and then I realized I also liked being under it. Okay, technically you're in it. I mean, the phrase under the sea really means that you're in the sediment at the bottom, and no one really wants to be there. But it's too late now to correct everyone, so I'll just kind of lean into it. But it was time to get back into the water. Bradley had been readying my HOV for a while now. That's a human-operated vehicle. Sometimes I say that instead of a submarine. Anyway, lots of safety checks, as you can imagine, and I wanted everything in order. It will just be the two of us, and I wanted to have everything checked and double-checked. When you're traveling under the sea, you can't leave anything to chance. Spare parts, an escape pod, and snacks all need to be checked and rechecked. I didn't mention it before, but when I was in the Amazon, Captain Flynn and I had a small misunderstanding about the snacks and his snack policy. But I made it up to him, and I sent him 1,000 oats and honey granola bars. He sent me a thank you note, so it's all good. He then said he preferred Pop-Tarts, so I noted that in my journal for next time. Now, if you're going under the sea, or into the sea, I know, sometimes I can't let that go, you would think I'm going to Atlantis. Everyone's always interested in Atlantis. I mean, according to Plato, the city sank beneath the ocean after its residents made a failed effort to conquer Athens around 9000 BC. Now, I'm sure there is a middle part to that story, and I know it exists, but no matter how drunk I get an Atlantean on Squid Ink wine, I can never quite get the full story. So no, I'm not going to Atlantis this time. I mean, like I said before, I know where Atlantis is, so I'm more interested in finding things that I, don't know where they are. But if you're curious, the truth is that many people over the years have claimed that there must be some truth behind the myths, speculating about where Atlantis would be found, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, Plato is actually crystal clear on where Atlantis is. He said, "For the ocean there was at that time navigable, for in front of the mouth, which you Greeks call, as you say, the Pillars Hercules, there lay an island which was larger than Libya and Asia together." In other words, it lies in the Atlantic Ocean, beyond the Straits of Gibraltar, at the mouth of the Mediterranean. In theory, however, Google notes a network of crisscross lines 620 miles off the coast of northwest Africa, near the Canary Islands on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. Some say that's where Atlantis is, or used to be. The perfect rectangle, which is about the size of Wales, was noticed on the Search Giant's underwater exploration tool by an aeronautical engineer who claimed it looks like an aerial map of a city. The underwater image can be found at the coordinates 31 degrees, 15 minutes, 15.53 seconds north and 24 degrees, 15 minutes, and 30.53 seconds west. But don't expect to be able to zoom in and see cars parked there. I've seen the Google submarine. It's not there yet. Now, there are so-called Atlantis experts. Here is the great thing about being an expert about something that either doesn't exist or no one can find. No one can prove you wrong. Or the ones that can prove you wrong don't really care enough about your theories to do so. It can create a debate that may lead nowhere, and then if you have a vested interest in keeping things secret, you've just blown your cover. So I get it. Most people in Atlantis just want to go about their business and let the rest of the world go by. Most of them have an aquatic version of Wi-Fi, which we'll talk about a little later, so they stay up to date mostly, but they look at everything with a really dispassionate eye, which is much in the way a scientist looks at a results table. Sure, there are some conclusions we want to draw, especially if we want to get published, but sometimes things don't work out, and as scientists we have to take the hit and record the loss. It's not easy sometimes, and yes, it's happened to me. I was absolutely sure that one of the noble gases really did have an odor. I thought the stench of xenon was filling up my lab. Turns out, Bradley had left an egg salad sandwich in his backpack for 3 days. We had a talk about that. They say noble gases are highly unreactive, but I wasn't that day, as I'm sure Bradley can attest. But speaking of noble gases, we'll be using helium. We're going really deep, and it will help us avoid oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide toxicity. So anyway, it was time to go. So I'm already in Los Angeles, so it's always easier just to explore the Pacific Ocean. No offense to the Atlantic, but sometimes commuting to work can be a factor. We were all packed up and ready to go, and we're by the private marina where I launch all of my water vehicles. I don't keep them there, but I do have a favorite launch site. It's just about south of Santa Monica. Sometimes I like to go to the 3rd Street Promenade before launch. There's an Urban Outfitters there, but I have to say it wasn't what I was expecting. I find the name of their store a little misleading, to be honest. There's an urgency there that doesn't really exist in that title. So I ended up just buying socks and a bucket hat, and I'm not really sure where I'm going to wear the socks. So we launched, and we were soon out onto the ocean. Now, here's the thing about my submarine. I have a bit of a ritual. I don't like to dive right away. I like to stay above water at first and see the sights. It kind of centers and relaxes me. As we left port, there were sea lions, seagulls, fishing boats, kayakers, and even a few lost surfers. The sun was bright, the air was crisp and clean, and I wanted to take it all in before diving. It's the only time I can smell the salty air, as my filtration system below is so efficient as to be completely odorless, like xenon. Bradley reminded me it was time, and we had to get going. We drove down hundreds of meters. Now, the average nuclear submarine can go about 300 meters, and let's just say we went a bit farther down. But I don't like to go too far down at first. I was looking at all the fish, dolphins, and an occasional sea turtle. One of the things I spent a little extra money on the submarine was lights, custom of course. So night or day, the deeper down you go, the darker it gets, and I like to see where I'm going. But I also like to see the marine life that's so vibrant and abundant. I saw yellowtail, white sea bass, and halibut all coming up to the sub trying to get a look inside. Marine life is very curious. It's just that you only really hear about the dolphins. Ironically, the dolphins swam past and largely ignored us. They'd seen us before and looked like they were over it. Now, I know dolphins can't smirk, but whatever the dolphin equivalent of that is, they were definitely doing it. Sometimes I get asked, when I'm talking about my submarine, Professor Atwood, well, why don't you have a periscope? It's a legitimate question. I always reply, old technology. Wi-Fi radio waves don't travel that great through the ocean, I understand, but acoustic waves do. But before I use the Acoustaband, I always check to see if there are any blue whales around, because for whatever reason, their songs in my Acoustaband seem to be on the same frequencies. So anyway, the acoustic waves go up, get picked up through one of the floating cell towers I installed, translated and converted back to the lab, and then up to the satellite, all in about 0.4 milliseconds. So my periscope is a satellite, but as a backup, I have a tethered amphibious camera drone that can swim and skim the surface as well as hover. So if the cloud cover is too thick for the satellite's cameras, I can always use my backup aquatic eyes, so to speak. Anyway, the trip was basically uneventful. Not too much to report there, but we were getting closer to our destination, an underwater volcano. Okay, our destination was behind it, but it was erupting, so there's always time to watch an underwater volcano do its thing. When I was a kid, I always thought underwater volcanoes made no sense. The lava cools off right away, so, why bother? Then I realized they would sometimes make islands, and my road to science and exploring opened up before me. Now, over 70% of volcanic eruptions happen underwater, but it's still pretty lucky to get to see one up close. Sure, it got a little warmer, but I have great climate control in the submarine. And even I installed a pool table a couple of months back, and it's even cool in the game room, which is great, and also because I have inertial dampeners. The balls don't roll off the table the way you would expect them to if you're going underwater. So it was really a good investment again. I don't really try to be frivolous with my enhancements, but every once in a while there is a certain level of creature comfort that you feel like is worth spending money on. And a pool table in an underwater HOV, as I sometimes say, is definitely worth it, I think. Now, getting back to the volcano. In any volcanic eruption, magma, which is molten rock beneath the Earth's surface, rises from the Earth to the surface of the seafloor. The magma contains dissolved gases which form bubbles as the pressure on the magma is reduced during its ascent. Now, underwater, the magma still faces the pressure of tons and tons of ocean water once it reaches the seafloor. So that pressure changes how lava forms, and the interaction between the water and the cooling magma is completely different than when magma interacts with air. When water hits hot magma at 800 degrees Celsius, it vaporizes in an instant. Its rapid expansion into steam can be strong enough to break the lava apart. On the flip side, when magma comes in contact with water, the temperature change is so dramatic that the magma instantly solidifies in a process called quenching. It's almost like the volcano is thirsty and then suddenly has more water than it can handle. So, as I was watching the volcano, I got this feeling of dichotomy. Heating and cooling, fire and water. The juxtaposition was really something to behold. I had this feeling that I was witnessing something that shouldn't be there. But then I stopped for a moment. That feeling went away, or at least altered. The more I watched, the more I felt that it should be there. That we as humans should be expecting the unexpected a little more. We get tunnel vision sometimes as we go about our lives and our routines. Day by day, nothing changes and nothing surprises us. But we need to be open to unexpected possibilities, especially in science. I mean, that's how the microwave oven was invented. In 1946, Percy Spencer, an engineer for the Raytheon Corporation, was working on a radar-related project. He was testing a new vacuum tube and got hungry. But as he reached into his pocket to get his chocolate bar, he discovered it had melted far more quickly than it should have. He was still hungry, so he started experimenting by aiming the vacuum tube at other items, such as eggs and popcorn kernels. Now, why he had all of those things in his lab, I'm honestly not sure, but, a scientist is always prepared. So Spencer realized that the heat the objects experienced was from the microwave energy. He then thought about how to create a superheating oven and sell unpopped corn in a bag covered in directional arrows. But then, in the 1950s, Jiffy Pop came out and people kind of forgot about it for a while. But anyway, my point is, an underwater volcano is a good reminder to expect the unexpected and to not be afraid to shake things up a bit whenever you get the chance. The volcano doesn't know it's not supposed to be there, or why it's there. It just knows that it wants to be there, or maybe even has to be there. Okay, that's the philosophy part more than the science, as we all understand that of course the volcano knows why it's there. All volcanoes do. But you can't have the scientific how and the why without thinking sometimes about the metaphysical because. So just a little tip there, I think. Now, I told Bradley to get closer to the volcano, as I had to find the secret entrance to the sunken city. Not Atlantis, as I told you before. I was actually looking for Cambay. In December of 2000, scientists discovered a huge lost city in the Gulf of Cambay off the west coast of India. It was lying 37 meters beneath the water, and the site stretched 8 kilometers long and 3.2 kilometers wide, and is believed to be over 9,000 years old. The site was found by chance while scientists were conducting a survey about pollution. Again, this goes back to expect the unexpected and be open to the discoveries. You may be studying the long-term effects of unbiodegradable plastic refuse in the ocean, and suddenly you discover a lost civilization. Scientists discovered regularly spaced dwellings, a granary, a bath, a citadel, and a drainage system. Now, this happens a lot. Scientists are disputing the carbon dating, as if some of the artifacts are naturally occurring or man-made. They don't know. They're not sure. They argue. They go back and forth. I mean, that's one thing. When you're outside of the science conference, when people are a little more respectful of different opinions, because that's what we're all here for. Generally, outside of that kind of science safe space, you see a lot more arguing and dissent. It's almost like you have a toddler with a pretzel, and then another toddler sees the pretzel and thinks it's an orange. So I'm not really sure sometimes why that happens. But again, I don't think that's the real mystery here. The carbon dating and if some of the artifacts are naturally occurring or man-made, I don't think that's what we should really be focusing on. I'm always skeptical personally when I see a sunken city or a so-called lost civilization. I mean, sometimes societies aren't lost. They just decide to leave. I've done a lot of prep for this journey, and with combining my Acoustaband periscope, satellite imaging, and just some good old-fashioned scientific speculation, I hypothesized the city was moved about 7,000 miles east and hidden behind an active underwater volcano. Sure, they left part of the old city there to be discovered. Why? So people would stop looking for them. So I had Bradley bring the sub in even closer, and sure enough, there it was. A small opening with 2 carved lions on either side. Each statue had the lion's front paw resting on a glowing sphere. Like most lost, or left civilizations, as we should call them, they figure if you've made it this far, you may as well come in. Bradley brought the sub in through a tunnel flanked by the lions and their glowing orbs, and sure enough, we were soon behind the volcano at the entrance to the hidden city of Cambay. And boy, what a difference 9,000 years makes. It had an old-world charm, but was also technologically advanced. In fact, the water instantly receded, and we had no need to surface. There was a submarine port, and Bradley brought the sub in gently, and we went ashore, so to speak. We were met on the dock enthusiastically by the Cambay liaison, Rictu, who greeted us warmly. He asked if Bradley was my servant, and I laughed, saying that people traveling with servants only seems to still happen on trains. And interestingly, there was no dome over the city. They kept the water out by anti-grav force fields, but said that they had a rapidly deploying dome as a backup in case of emergencies. It's always good to be prepared, and to, of course, expect the unexpected. As we walked through the city square, people stopped to look at us, as they didn't get many visitors, obviously. The port was pretty much empty except for my sub. The city square was beautiful. It was filled with bright-colored buildings and matched the Cambanians' brightly colored clothes. At first I thought there were food carts, but then I realized they weren't food carts. They were toy carts for the children. People brought their children to play in the fountains and then went to the carts to get toys. Mechanical dolphins, toy boats made of a biodegradable plastic, and even fireworks. Now, that seemed a little unsafe, but Rictu said they were wet fireworks, which I learned that while they may look and act like regular fireworks, they were actually just atomically altered water molecules designed to simulate fireworks. So they were harmless. And if you accidentally get hit with one, you just get wet. I thought that was genius. So Rictu said we were just in time for dinner, which was great, because we had left all of our snacks on the submarine. Now, dinner in Cambay was a little different. Everyone ate at the same time together in a great hall. It was a way for the entire city to stay connected. Rictu brought us into the great hall, and there were already 2 places set for us. Hospitality seems to be high on the priority list for Cambanians, and we appreciated it. The meal was excellent. I can't say we could identify everything, but Rictu assured us that there was no deep-sea angler in any of the dishes, as Bradley is allergic. There was a sea coral casserole, an anemone souffle, and plenty of monk sea milk, but we politely passed on that. Also, all of the food had a slightly charred taste to it because of the proximity to the active volcano. It actually helped with the kelp salad, but it wasn't so great for the seaweed ice cream. As we ate, people talked about their day and were joyfully talking about work and hobbies, and not surprising, fishing was one of them. Although I have to say I was never quite sure if it was a job or a hobby, as they seemed to enjoy it so much. We discussed philosophy, scientific discoveries, and occasionally someone even mentioned Stranger Things. As like I said, they do get a modified Wi-Fi technology in the city, but they don't really get to hit shows right away, and I can certainly relate to that. Half the time I'm at dinner parties and I have just no idea what people are talking about. Apparently there's a king of tigers somewhere who did something, and I don't know. But anyway, we also discussed volcanoes, exploring, wet fireworks technology, and they were even interested in my nanobot toast project, as it would save them considerable time. I told them it wasn't quite perfected yet, but that when it was, I would return and share it. But I really wanted to get to the heart of the matter, and that was, of course, why they left. Rictu gave me a knowing smile and honestly was a lot more forthcoming than my Atlantean friends. He said it was a conscious decision to leave the world behind, and it had a lot to do with expecting the unexpected. He said if his ancestors had stayed where they were, nothing would have happened, and nothing would have changed. By leaving, it hastened their development of force field domes and amphibious hovercars that worked in both air and water. Turns out it was similar to my drone periscope technology, so we compared notes, and now each of our systems is 19% more efficient. Then Rictu told me that while they always expect the unexpected, that sometimes you have to help the unexpected along. That's why they moved. But he saw the next question in my face before I even asked it, so he answered it before I even opened my mouth. He said they planned on moving again in another 5,000 years or so, just to shake things up again. The meal was delicious, and by now everyone was getting ready to go home for the evening. Rictu showed us to a room in our own building. I'm thinking at some point the Cambanians built it as a hotel, until they realized that kind of defeats the purpose of being a left civilization. They just never got around to retheming it, so it was very nice and we had plenty of space. Bradley got his own room, which he was happy about, because a lot of the time he has to bunk with the rest of the crew. He doesn't seem to mind too much, except for that time we were in a hot air balloon across the Sahara. So Rictu bid us good night, and I settled in for a nice, long, comfortable sleep. Even though we were underwater in a gravity-pressured dome, I could still hear the gentle sounds of the ocean currents as they passed over us. There were no insects, which is not surprising, but there was the occasional sound of an amphibious hovercar making a late-night food delivery. It was all very calming and soothing. I kept my window open to feel the breeze. There wasn't one, of course, in a pressurized dome, but I kept it open anyway just to smell the ocean. It's very interesting to look out your window and see an underwater city, but it's even more interesting to use the same window and look a little further beyond it and see a dome of ocean. It's almost like you're in some sort of reverse aquarium, and you're the lucky one with the better view. I was just drifting off to sleep when Bradley woke me up. He needed a glass of water and couldn't find any. They never finished the desalinization plumbing in their hotel, so unfortunately I had to get up and wake up Rictu, who was a very good sport about it. He brought us 2 gallons of fresh drinking water, and I think he brought us that much to say, "Hey, you're our guest. We're happy to provide you with whatever you need. But also, this is so much water that there's no way you should have to bother me again tonight." Bradley was happy and went back to sleep. The next morning we were packing up and Bradley was prepping the submarine for the return voyage. Rictu and the whole city came out to see us off, which was a great honor. He invited us to visit any time, but also asked to please keep their location off social media, which I was happy to do. I wanted to respect their wishes. And I don't really know how to use social media. Bradley handles all that, and he explained to me that with social media, whenever something gets too successful, it gets replaced. Very well. So anyway, Rictu explained the privacy request, and it boiled down to that while they were delighted to welcome the occasional explorer, they had no wish to get their hotel up and running, and I totally understood. Bradley and I waved goodbye, and soon we were on our way. The volcano had stopped erupting, so it was cooler and quieter on our way out. The trip back was uneventful, but the occasional rogue dolphin did indeed look at us curiously, until other members of their pod gave them a disapproving chitter. Soon we were back in Santa Monica, where I treated Bradley to an afternoon at a day spa. He was looking a little worn out from the journey, and I think being that close to an underwater active volcano made him a little anxious. I waited for him on the beach, where I just sat and enjoyed the view from above water for a while. The West Coast has beautiful sunsets, and if you've never seen one, I highly recommend it. And as a bonus, each one is just a little bit different, a bit like snowflakes. Once the sun had set and Bradley was done with his massages, it was time to go home. I was definitely looking forward to sleeping in my own bed. Like I said, I did make the submarine as comfortable as I could, but let's be honest, it's still a submarine. There's really nothing like sleeping in your own bed, on your own pillow, above water. Societal seclusion is great, and I totally get why so many lost civilizations seek it out. But for me, give me the bright, shining sun and a new adventure every day, and I am more than satisfied. I always expect the unexpected, and while that unexpected part is not always a positive, welcome event, I would not change it for the world. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Scientifically, when unexpected things happen, it usually means you're moving forward, and that's always the direction you want to be headed. I was asleep as soon as I hit the pillow, dreaming of what the next adventure may hold. Good night, and that's all for now. Thank you, fellow adventurers, and I'll see you next time. Okay, just want to mention the Patreon. I know I've said science and exploring is expensive. I would like you, if you can, to join the White Cat Adventurers Club. You'll get something special. You'll get a soundscape of every episode, and think of it as a blank adventure canvas for your ears and mind. So you get a version of the story without the story. You'll get added music, sound effects, and ambient noise. So you can create your own adventure story in your mind as you drift off to sleep. But that's not all. You'll get a lot of other things, too. Like access to my weekly journal, a show about watching things called What Are You Watching? And exclusive news and updates from White Cat Entertainment. They've got a few things going on that you may want to check out. So thanks again, adventurers. I will talk to you soon.
The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood was created, written, and performed by Chris Mancini and produced by White Cat Entertainment. It is a work of fiction. Maybe. Music and sound design by Ron Tansky at rontanskymusic.com. For more info and merchandise, go to whitecatentertainment.com.